I was mid-presentation to finalize the most important client contract of my career when Harold cleared his throat. The room went silent. "We'll let Bryce take it from here," he announced, his voice falsely cheerful. "As of today, he's our new director of strategic partnerships." My pen stopped moving. My face remained completely neutral, even as my stomach dropped. Everyone around the conference table clapped politely. Bryce, Harold's 28-year-old son, stood up looking smug. I'd spent 6 months building this deal from nothing, and now, in one sentence, it was being handed to someone who couldn't even spell the client's name correctly. "You've got to be kidding me," I thought. But I kept smiling. I gathered my papers and walked out calmly. Back at my desk, I opened the shared drive to review the contract documents. The file I'd created from scratch now showed Bryce Bennett as primary contact. My name was nowhere. Not on the team list, not in the project overview, not in the internal announcement that had gone out that morning. I scrolled through every page, searching for any mention of my work. Nothing. I'd been completely erased. Then I tried to access the client folder to check something. Access denied. My permissions had been revoked while I was still in the presentation. They'd planned this. Harold had orchestrated my removal down to the minute. I sat there staring at the red error message, my hands shaking slightly. This was deliberate. This was calculated. This was war. That evening, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I was copied on a message from the client's COO. Subject line, "Contract concerns, missing team member." My heart raced as I opened it. The message was brief and professional. "Please confirm why Dana Whitaker is no longer part of this engagement. Our team specifically requested her continued involvement per our original agreement." I smiled bitterly, reading those words 3 times. The client had noticed. They cared. They were pushing back. I forwarded the email to my personal account immediately, then started a new document on my laptop. My name is Dana Whitaker, and when my boss gave my promotion to his son, I didn't get angry. I got strategic. I got documentation. I got everything I deserved. The story was just beginning. 6 months earlier, Harold had made me a promise. We'd been in his office reviewing quarterly results when he said it clearly. "Lock in this client, Dana, and the next promotion is yours. That's how we reward loyalty here." I'd believed him completely. I'd stayed late every night for weeks, worked through weekends, missed my best friend's wedding to finalize proposal details. I'd even trained Bryce on the basics when Harold asked me to show him the ropes. Bryce had nodded along, taken careful notes, and asked surprisingly good questions. I thought maybe he was genuinely interested in learning. Now I understood. He hadn't been learning. He'd been copying everything, stealing my work while pretending to be my student. And Harold had helped him do it. Bryce's first client call was a disaster. He strolled in 15 minutes late, coffee in hand, looking completely unbothered. He mispronounced the client's CEO's name twice. When asked about deliverable timelines, he fumbled through notes, clearly trying to find information he should have memorized. The client's team exchanged confused glances. One person actually looked at me for clarification. I kept my expression blank. After the call, Harold pulled Bryce aside. I overheard him from my desk. "Give the kid time. He's learning on the job. That's how I learned too." No criticism, no accountability, just endless excuses. I opened a new folder on my personal laptop and titled it simply Documentation. Then I started keeping notes. Every mistake, every fumble, every lie, everything. The client emailed again 2 days later. This time, the message was more direct. "We need to discuss team composition. We expected Dana Whitaker to remain point of contact. Please advise on her current role." Harold called an emergency meeting that afternoon. His face was red, his voice tight. "We just need to smooth this over," he said, looking at me directly. "Dana, you'll attend the next call. Sit in silently. Let Bryce lead, but be there for support if needed." I understood immediately. I was being used as a security blanket, a prop to keep the client happy while Bryce got the credit. Of course, I said, whatever the client needs. Inside, I was already planning my next move. They wanted me silent? Perfect. Silence could be strategic too. That evening, I opened LinkedIn and searched for Celeste Rourke, the client's CEO. I found what I was looking for immediately, an old photo from our Northwestern MBA graduation 6 years ago. We'd been in the same cohort, studied together, presented our final project as partners. We'd stayed in loose touch over the years, trading occasional messages about industry trends. I sent her a direct message, keeping it light but honest. Guess I've been replaced on our project. Apparently, nepotism beats 6 months of actual work. Her reply came within minutes. What? This is unacceptable. Let's fix that. My heart pounded as I read her words. I had an ally, someone with real power who understood what was happening. The game had just changed completely in my favor. Bryce made another critical error the following week. He accidentally CC'd the wrong legal team on sensitive contract revisions. The documents went to a vendor from a completely different project. By the time anyone noticed, we'd lost 2 full days of progress while lawyers scrambled to redo redlining and damage control. The client was furious about the delay. Harold blamed system errors and miscommunication. But I had the email thread. I had timestamps. I had proof of exactly who'd made the mistake and when. I saved everything to 3 different cloud accounts. This wasn't about revenge. This was protection, about making sure when the truth came out, nobody could deny it. I was building an airtight case, one email at a time. Harold cornered me in the hallway outside the break room. His voice was low and threatening. "You're acting cold toward Bryce. This attitude doesn't reflect well on your future here, Dana." I met his eyes calmly, keeping my hands folded in front of me. Professional, neutral. "I apologize if I've given that impression. I'm simply focused on supporting the team's success in whatever capacity you need." He studied my face, looking for cracks, for emotion, for anything he could use against me. He found nothing. "Good," he said finally, walking away. "Keep it that way." As soon as he was gone, I pulled out my phone and made a note with the date and exact quote. Inside, I was already drafting my resignation plan. Not yet, but soon. Celeste called me directly that Friday afternoon. "Dana, I want you to come lead our new strategic expansion team. We're building something significant, and you're exactly who we need. We'll match your current salary and double it with performance bonuses." My breath caught. This was real. This was happening. "I'm incredibly interested," I said carefully, "but I need 3 weeks. There's something I need to finish here first." Celeste laughed. "I understand completely. Take your time. Make sure you leave on your terms." After we hung up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, letting the reality sink in. I had an exit strategy now, but more importantly, I had leverage. I wasn't leaving beaten and broken. I was leaving victorious. I just needed to execute the final steps. I spent that weekend compiling everything into one comprehensive document. Every email I'd authored, every contract draft with track changes showing my work, time-stamped Slack messages where I'd explained strategy to the team, meeting notes where my ideas were recorded before Bryce claimed them, client testimonials praising my approach. The document was 70 pages long, organized by date, completely indisputable. Every claim backed by evidence, every accusation supported by facts. This wasn't emotion or opinion. This was a paper trail that couldn't be argued with. I saved it as strategic partnership documentation and put it in a secure folder. My insurance policy, my ammunition, my proof that I'd earned everything they tried to steal from me. Monday morning, a junior analyst knocked on my office door. Her name was Claire, and I'd been mentoring her for the past year. She looked nervous, almost scared. "Dana, I need to tell you something. Bryce took your roadmap deck from the shared drive last month. He asked me to remove your name from all the slides and add his instead." She bit her lip. "I'm sorry, I should have said something sooner. I was afraid of losing my job." I stood up and hugged her. "Thank you for telling me now. Do you still have the original file?" She nodded. "Save a copy somewhere safe," I told her gently. "Protect yourself. This story isn't over yet." After she left, I added her testimony to my documentation file. Another piece of evidence, another nail in their coffin. At the company's Q2 town hall, Harold let Bryce present his client strategy to the entire organization. I stood in the back of the auditorium, watching. Bryce stumbled through slides I'd created, using language I'd written, explaining concepts he barely understood. He was visibly sweating under the stage lights, fumbling with the remote. The audience clapped politely when he finished, but I saw the confused faces. People knew something was off. Afterward, 3 colleagues approached me quietly. "That was your work, wasn't it?" one whispered. I just smiled. "I'm not worried about credit right now. Truth has a way of coming out eventually." They nodded, understanding the subtext. I wasn't forgotten. I was remembered. And everyone was watching what happened next. I sent what I called my trap email the next morning. Casual, innocent, professional. "Hi team, just looping back on the Q3 rollout strategy I created in April. Would love to hear Bryce's additions or modifications to the original framework. Want to make sure we're all aligned." I CC'd internal staff and the client team. Then I waited. The responses were telling. The client team replied enthusiastically, praising my thorough groundwork. Internal staff stayed silent. Bryce never responded at all. Harold sent a terse message, "Let's discuss offline." But the damage was done. I'd publicly reminded everyone whose work this actually was, and I'd done it so professionally that nobody could accuse me of being difficult or emotional. The silence from Bryce spoke louder than any denial could have. Celeste forwarded her concerns to a board member that same week. The message was copied to me. "We're pausing contract signature until our original point of contact is restored to the engagement. This change was made without our consultation or approval." The board demanded an internal review. When asked about it, Harold shrugged it off in a company-wide email. "Just a temporary delay while we clarify roles. The client will come around." But they wouldn't. I knew Celeste. Once she drew a line, she didn't move. The board had given Harold 1 week to resolve the situation. 5 business days to decide whether protecting his son was worth losing a 7-figure contract. I counted down each day, watching him squirm, knowing exactly how this would end. While reviewing files for the board investigation, I discovered something interesting. My strategic frameworks, the ones I developed for internal planning, were being presented to a third-party consultant for evaluation. I recognized my work immediately in the documents. The consultant's name was familiar too. Marcus Wells, an old colleague from my previous company. I reached out directly. "Marcus, quick question. Are you reviewing strategic partnership frameworks for Harold's company?" He confirmed. "Would you like to see the original versions?" I asked, "with creation dates and authorship intact?" There was a pause. "That would be very helpful, actually. Some inconsistencies have come up." I sent him everything, every original file, every proof of authorship. The truth was spreading beyond Harold's control now. HR called me in for an official interview 3 days later. 2 representatives sat across from me with notepads and serious expressions. "We're conducting a review of the recent organizational changes in your department. Can you walk us through your role in the client contract?" I presented my documentation calmly. 70 pages of evidence, organized by date. Emails, contract drafts, client communications, witness statements, everything. "I'm not angry," I said clearly. "I'm just ready for clarity about authorship and contribution." They took copies of everything and thanked me for my cooperation. As I left, one of them said quietly, "This is very thorough documentation, Dana. Very professional." I smiled. I believe in protecting the truth. Harold was called in for his interview immediately after mine. He was in that room for 3 hours. The ultimatum came directly from Celeste to our company CEO. I wasn't on the call, but Marcus told me about it later. Remove Bryce from the contract and reinstate Dana Whitaker, or we terminate the agreement permanently. No negotiation, no compromise, no second chances. It was me or them. The CEO had spent 2 years cultivating this client relationship. The contract was worth millions in recurring revenue. Losing it would impact quarterly earnings and shareholder confidence. Harold had put him in an impossible position. Protect nepotism or protect the company. There was only one logical choice. By end of day, the decision had been made. Harold and Bryce were both called into closed-door meetings. Neither one came out looking confident. The power had shifted completely. Justice was finally coming. Harold stormed into my office that evening, his face purple with rage. "What did you do?" he demanded, slamming the door behind him. I looked up from my computer, completely calm. "I did my job, Harold. Your son didn't. The client noticed, the board noticed. I simply documented the truth." He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size. "You've destroyed his career. He's my son." I stood up, meeting his eyes directly. "You destroyed his career when you gave him a position he wasn't qualified for. I just stopped pretending otherwise." He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. We both knew I was right. He slammed out of my office and walked straight into a board meeting he hadn't been invited to. His reckoning had arrived. The termination notice went out quietly Friday afternoon. Due to organizational restructuring, Bryce Bennett will be departing the company effective immediately. Staff who knew the real story understood what restructuring meant. Harold was asked to announce his early retirement that same week. Officially, he was stepping down to pursue other interests. Unofficially, the board had given him the choice: retire with dignity or be fired for nepotism and mismanagement. He chose retirement. Within a week, both of them were gone. Their offices cleaned out, their names removed from the directory. The erasure they tried to inflict on me had happened to them instead. Poetic justice at its finest. I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just relief that the truth had finally been acknowledged and acted upon. The updated contract arrived Monday morning. I opened it with shaking hands. My name was on the cover page. Primary contact, Dana Whitaker, Director of Client Strategy. My original timeline was intact. My deliverables, my strategy framework, everything I'd created, finally credited correctly. Celeste had added one additional clause that made me smile. Any future disputes regarding project management or team composition must be escalated directly to Dana Whitaker for resolution. This clause is binding for the contract duration. It was written into the legal agreement. They'd protected me contractually. I read that clause 3 times, feeling vindicated in a way I'd never experienced before. This was more than getting credit. This was being valued, being trusted, being seen. At the next all-hands meeting, the interim CEO made an announcement. "I'm pleased to introduce Dana Whitaker as our new Senior Director of Client Strategy." The title I'd been promised 6 months ago, the role I'd earned through actual work. Everyone clapped, and this time it felt genuine, real. Colleagues I'd worked with for years smiled with honest congratulations. The new VP of Operations approached me afterward. "That position was created specifically for you," she said quietly. "We restructured to make sure you got exactly what you deserved." I thanked her, feeling emotional but keeping it controlled. This wasn't charity, this wasn't pity. This was recognition of value, of contribution, of merit over nepotism. Finally, the system had worked the way it was supposed to. Celeste sent me one final message that made everything worthwhile. Just added a legacy clause to our long-term contract renewal. If you ever leave the company, we have the option to terminate without penalty. You're the relationship, not the company. I actually laughed reading it. That's incredibly generous, I replied, but also risky. What if I get hit by a bus? Her response came immediately. Then we'll deal with it, but loyalty like yours deserves protection. You earned this, Dana. I saved that message in a special folder, not because I needed proof anymore, because sometimes you need to remember that doing the right thing eventually gets recognized, that integrity matters, that the truth wins, not always quickly, not always easily, but eventually, consistently, definitively. Nobody talked about Bryce anymore. His LinkedIn profile updated with vague corporate speak, transitioning to new opportunities in strategic consulting. No company responded to his applications. His network connections slowly dried up as people realized what had happened. I watched him disappear from every professional circle we'd shared, quietly, completely, inevitably. I felt no pleasure in his failure, just relief that the pattern had been broken. Harold's legacy of nepotism had finally caught up with him. The company culture was changing. Merit was starting to matter again. 3 junior staff members approached me, asking for mentorship. "We want to learn how to build careers the right way," one said, "like you did." I agreed to mentor all 3. The cycle was breaking, finally. 1 year later, I gave a keynote speech at a Women in Leadership conference. 200 people filled the ballroom, mostly young professionals starting their careers. I talked about documentation, about knowing your worth, about refusing to be erased. I ended with words that felt true and hard-won. Nepotism can open doors, but it can't keep them open. Not when real talent builds its own doors, its own rooms, its own entire buildings. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of women approached me with their own stories of being overlooked, replaced, erased. I listened to each one and offered advice. That evening, Celeste texted me, "You're changing the industry one story at a time." Maybe I was, or maybe I was just refusing to stay silent. Either way, I finally felt what I'd been owed, seen, valued, and worthy of the success I'd earned.